So, Mr. Reddy, thank you for your time. Welcome to PlanetCEO Studios, and congratulations for your recent tremendous success of public issue. And recently, you are stock listed. So, uh, and also, I would like to congratulate your recent theme, sustainable for design for sustainable tomorrow, which is like the most happening slogan now. I can say the most important priority. So, as a technology company, you see like a lot of talk is happening. How you see as an entrepreneur and somebody who provides solutions, you can be a part of solution, and how you can address the global challenges.
Good morning, Naveen. Thank you very much for inviting me to the Planet CEO Forum. Thank you for your compliments on our public issue. We feel very delighted about it. This actually is the second listed company within our group. The first is called the Cyient Limited. The second one, which got listed in the last 2 months, is called Cyient DLM.
So these are what is the period, time period between both of them?
The first one got listed 25 years back, 1997. The second got listed now, but the first one is the parent company, and the second is its daughter company. Very reputed investment bankers told me that, Mr. Reddy, this is the ultimate that an entrepreneur can look forward to. You list a subsidiary of yours in the stock exchanges in addition to your parent company itself. We feel very delighted about it. I think the markets like what we do. They give us very good valuations. Our stock, since it's listed, has multiplied itself. It's a good reflection of the interest that they have, the confidence that they have in the company. So thank you very much for bringing that up.
Very surprised looking at the oversubscription 10 times or something. I think if I'm not wrong.
We were oversubscribed 71 times.
71 times.
So I would be lying to you if I said that I expected that amount of.
But that is, I think. Do you think anybody has got that kind of?
Yes,
response?
I believe there was a company which came after us, which also got a subscription of that nature. So it's not oversubscription which really triggers happiness to us, but more important because we earned a lot of enemies in being oversubscribed because we had to give very small portions of stock to people. And so therefore, but more importantly, the stock has also appreciated itself almost by 200% since it got listed. That's resounding messaging coming from our shareholders, the confidence that they have in us. So that's a good story to talk about. But the more important one that for discussion today is more amount of our focus, our thrust, and our belief in sustainability. I think this world requires to be conscious of the fact that it is not that we live and disappear, but there are going to be human generations coming out for maybe millions of years thereafter. We don't know how it would end. So you should also be conscious of the fact they all have to live too. It's not just that we lived and disappeared from here, but equally important is the fact that they will also have to live very happily in this world. So therefore, it becomes onus responsibility on every citizen of this world at this point of time to make sure that this universe is a livable place. We can't flounder and flourish currently at the expense of future generations. The good news that we have is for sure that there is a fairly large amount of consciousness that's come into the world in terms of sustainability. There's no denying at all, there will always be some gaps between what people perceive them to be. For example, the developing nations believe that the crisis today is all created by the countries which have already been advanced countries. They went ahead and created all this pollution, and they're now asking that development cannot happen with the developing countries because they're going to create pollution.
Yeah, true. That is what they agreed in Paris Agreement.
Yes. So therefore, it's question of doing the right balance between what has happened and what is to be done now. So therefore, can we therefore say that the developed nations have already plundered this world, so we should allow the developing countries also to plunder the same way? No way, it can't happen. So everybody has to take that responsibility to ensure that this world is a better place to live. So as an organization, I think we have got several initiatives in place. We are working towards that goal. We help companies all around the world to build products. So the first thing strategically that we did was we introduced a service offering called circular designing for circularity. And as a result of that, we are trying to lay the objectives with in consultation with the customer, because the customer decides it, is to say they should be in a position to reuse as much as about 80 to 90% of the material, even when the product becomes obsoleted or it's unserviceable.
This is coming at the design stage.
At the design stage. So therefore, that's called design for circularity. And customers are accepting it, but it's also not easy, because you also have to keep in mind that this will probably be more expensive. The cost will go up. The type of material that you have to use is going to be different from the material used otherwise. So it's not something that will happen overnight. I think customers are understanding it, are trying to make some changes, and they will not also do for every product. Some products which are critical certainly are becoming important for them to bring about a change. And we are helping our customers in terms of designing for circularity. The second thing that we also felt was, the responsible citizens of this world, we have now gone ahead and bought a company which is being integrated into the parent company as we speak, about 9 months back in Finland. And this company primarily works in sustainability. It works on initiatives such as alternative fuels. It also works on repurposing some of the fossil fuel plants. It's also working on more amount of R&D in the areas of hydrogen and a few more things. So therefore, that we are using that particular piece of that division of our business in order to talk to the customers and how we can definitely help them in bringing down the pollution levels, emission levels all around the world. A third initiative that we have in the company at this point is also the we have been courageous to very openly make a statement by 2030 this company will be net neutral. We literally also have a fairly large amount of our power consumption in our plants in Hyderabad, which are all being done through the renewables. We have a solar plant which is doing a megawatt of power, and that is captive to our one of our development centers. So therefore, it has been a very bold move on the company to bring in these three things together. One is in terms of a strategy which says that we'll design for circularity. The second one is operational. We are making sure that we will have a division which will specialize in this area of sustainability. And the third one is build a consciousness, become a good citizen by saying that we will ensure that we will be carbon neutral, net neutral by 2030.
Yeah, so I would come back to the governance and your responsibility as a company. But I think you mentioned very important that your acquisition in Finland. What is the role of the technology? Like, if you want to elaborate, like what kind of work they are doing, if it is a cutting edge technology or it is largely brainchild engineering or developing solutions, how do you see the transformation going through in Europe and other developing countries?
As I said, they do about three services that I know of for sure. One is that they are working on alternative fuels. Um, I can't name the customer. There's a very large customer that we have who wants alternative fuels to come by. So therefore, you not only now develop alternative fuels, but thereafter you look at what's the performance of these engines with these alternative engines. You also need to do the cost benefit analysis associated with it. So it's a comprehensive solution of what alternatives could possibly be there. And if you say alternatives, are they available in bulk? How are they be transportable? So the complete ecosystem has to be thought about. The second one they do, and I think it become much larger in the recent past, especially because of the Ukraine war. Most of Europe was dependent very heavily on Ukrainian gas, and that there's been rumors of how it happened, all right, but there is a challenge in terms of the pipelines itself, which bring gas from Ukraine into Europe. So the end result is that a number of plants have to be repurposed with alternative gas supplies, which have different type of compositions. Or also, in some of the cases, they probably have to bring in a little bit of fossil fuel because it has to do the balancing of the plant. That's the second service offering that we had. We not only because of Ukraine war, it's become more accelerated. Even otherwise, we were actually doing the other way around: take the fossil fuels and get converted into gas-fired plants. So therefore, that's a good initiative that we have at this point of time. And the third thing that they're doing is they're looking at future of renewables in the world. One of the things that I know that they are doing a fairly large amount of work in hydrogen. It's not how do you produce a hydrogen, that has become one challenge, all right. But once you have the hydrogen, how do you then efficiently burn it to make sure that you have the right levels of productivity associated with these plants? And there are, as I said, supply chain issues are there with because we address them. How do you transport them? How do you dispense them? They are highly inflammable. At the pressures that they are, you require literally steel of very thickness. They're saying that cannot happen to be so heavy. The truck is moving steel, not hydrogen at that point of time. So therefore, you need to probably have reinforced carbon filamented utensils at this point of time, which can carry hydrogen. So there are a number of initiatives of this nature which are happening.
Fantastic. So you touched upon very important aspects which you can broadly classify under sustainability, like risk management on one you talked about under the supply chain, which is broadly what it brings to the question. Do you think the are companies which are largely thinking about global, approach or global footprint, whichever part of the world they are coming from, whether India, China, or the European world or America, do you think they have broadly not started taking into cognizance this about the risk management and also over the large scale supply chain, whether it's in terms of material management or consumption? These things are considered, and how do you think that is going to pan out?
See, for any corporate, especially of repute of a certain size, risk is a very key element of our business. So, actually, to the extent that today the Stock Exchanges Board of India mandates that we also have a risk committee in addition to an audit committee.
It's a part of ESG norms.
ESG norms. So, if you look at the risk committee, there are 12 or 13 parameters under which they are monitoring them. One of them is also to do with sustainability. And sustainability is one, supply chains are the other. These are all the risks that we have. So much before even Ukrainian war broke out, we've been very concerned about our sustainability in terms of in terms of supply chains. And so therefore, we have consciously put strategies in place of saying how do we look at alternative supplies. And one has to keep in mind it's very easy to get an alternative supply. That's not a big deal to me. But what cost are you getting it? That's the next step that comes in. So then, cost cannot be absorbed by a company. They have to be passed on to the customer, with the consumer ready to accept it. So risks are there, risks are monitored. There's a risk mitigation strategy that we put against each one of them. And it's not that you do once, it's done. It's an ongoing process. Every quarter, we meet to make sure.
What I just got can't help little bit humor came to me when this plus one strategy they are talking about. When you talk about this, how much alternate about the cost is what the core of this plus one they are talking about for strategy recently.
Correct. I agree with you, Naveen. The China plus one strategy people talk about, there is also a cost element that's involved. Um, but then there's risk involved. Right now, some of the luxury brand cars are not being delivered for 9 months to 12 months. And that's because of the chip shortage that they have. Now, you say you can go through it once and look at that cost. You might have a chip which will cost higher if you probably produced in Germany or in the United States. But the fact that you have waiting for 12 months, there's a hidden cost that you're not actually factoring.
This is exactly, sir, the core of my this inquiry was that are we kind of doing broadly, even though we have a large planning and goals, is it kind of a knee-jerk reaction are we doing around the world? Or do you think there is a systematic inclusion of risk? Do you think we are there yet?
No, there is a systematic inclusion of risk for sure. If you look at the globalization 3.0, I think we went overboard. We never looked at anything called risk. We said it's the cost which makes more difference.
Overexcited with the
Market. And wherever the costs are lower, I went around at a feverish pace, not realizing that I actually are overexposing myself to a particular geography or a particular country. So long as it was cheap, it was functionally fine. We said this is globalization, let's go get them from there. Now they started realizing if there is a supply chain disruption, then this whole cost story goes for a spin. It's a somersault.
It's a 2.0 of your own industry. It's almost
Yes.
like that.
So therefore, I think people were conscious of risk, but I think Ukraine showed us how risk can play havoc with companies, and that is how now people are looking a little more inward, and then saying it's an inward plus outward is a combination of new globalization paradigm.
But if you, since you are very senior, is it not inevitable that we are seeing this kind of incidents around the world over the past 50, 60 years, at least after the Second War, at least? That every 1.5 decade you are seeing some kind of a thing disrupting. Earlier in 2008, you saw what happened back in the US and which triggered in Europe and all. We saw large panning out in this country. I see that that's what actually pushed back us towards incorporating the sustainable development goals. Largely, I see. So that's what I'm saying, sir. Whether are we actually looking at least for the next 30, 25? Do you think they are planning for next 25, 30 years and looking at the past trajectory? Is it what inculcated?
No, I'm not very sure. I'm not a strong believer in looking at past. I look at future all the time.
But what about
So
the eventuality?
the uncertainties, we can always estimate them. At this point of time, I think there are uncertainties for the future, and people are in a position to estimate them. They're not looking at 25 years, honestly. They're looking much, much farther than that. If you look at only India at this point of time, the Prime Minister talks about the Amrit Kal, which is this 25 years we're into, which is basically making sure that 100 years happens. But if you look at challenges that we are facing with things like sustainability, it's much, much longer.
And so, how do you see as a country? Because you see that the leadership, both as well the political as well as business leaders, do you see that now we have that economic benefit of taking all these things forward? Because over the few years we are focused only on increasing our economic capital and then providing employment, and it was not a priority. I'm not saying that it's not concerning, but do you see there is an incentive now?
Yeah. I don't think there's incentive. The consciousness has grown, and people have also got to understand now that by becoming more conscious, you're also becoming more profitable.
Correct.
Right. So therefore, you're not only socially responsible, you're responsible to the society to the extent possible, but equally important is you're responsible for the business. And you're seeing if you combine both of them together, there's a good value for the business to coming back.
So one of these points I raised not during my interactions, but in a closed door interaction, that largely most of uh, the business world have always justified, and also they have delivered to their shareholders and their employees and take care of them well around the world broadly. But if you look at the market economy, which is broadly what your the economic is coming from. Do you think if the word shareholders to stakeholders, what they call the community or your customers, do you think they have been appropriately included in the whole
Yes.
vision?
Yes. Yes. I think certainly companies are getting very conscious. It is not creating just shareholders' value, but creating the stakeholders' value. I think companies like us have been much more conscious of it, much ahead of time. So I keep saying this. That's how the. It's not just saying that we breathed in and breathed out what we said so far. That we built this company on foundation, which is called values, and we call them values first. FIRST: fairness, respect, integrity, sincerity, and transparency. That's the foundation we have. On top of the foundation, not many people recognize if you want to build a company which is successful, you need to have four pillars on which you build it. And what are those four pillars? One is your investors, you have customers, you have employees, and people don't recognize there's also society. And if I keep saying that, even I can't say all four at a time, that's why that's not the priority, they're equally important. And even if one of them becomes weaker, the superstructure becomes unstable. So the result is you have to be equitable to all the four stakeholders. You need to be fair. You give them respect. They are now all stakeholders. They're not shareholders. Shareholders is only one component of the four that I talked about. With that, I think we are in a position to now, I think customers also respect your ability to talk about sustainability, your ability to start saying that, I'm looking at my stakeholders and not just my shareholders.
Broadly true. And I've seen one of your goals. It is mentioned about like mandating your vendors also to be
Yes.
broadly sustainable. And so, in terms of delivering, this is what actually is more important. And the society which you touched upon, where it is like you can call that as social responsibility or inclusion, or fulfilling your regulations or compliance. So many ways you can say. But at the end of the day, so broadly, I think people are coming to a consensus whether it is an integral aspect of your own organizational fulfillment, because most of the raw material is coming from the community, or you can say broadly the natural capital, or consumption is water, whether electricity, water, because mostly this is public infrastructure, not in private in nature. So it is a hardcore, tangible infrastructure and material both, which is coming from so-called society. So, do you think there is a model and also maturity which is will also happen in the industries and in the companies? How to map that and broadly, classify as a part of larger objective? Will that be feasible?
I think certainly it's feasible. I believe that it's already being done. The larger objective is to make sure that we make this world sustainable. We all have to bring down the emission levels and particle levels and so on and so forth. So, to that extent, I think there are a number of actions that are being taken by companies, irrespective of the cost associated with them. I think they are in a position to take them because we can't, in the name of sustainability, we can't ground a business. It has to be a slow transition that has happened. I think the government has also given enough room for people, and they've got the policies in place which will make sure that no company will get grounded, but progressively we will comply.
Would you like to share in one case in your case of where you are delivering technology to your customers with sustainability, right? An example, and also you can share your plan, how you are engaging the community broadly in India. One example.
No, I think one example is we work with a fairly large number of rail equipment manufacturers. These are coaches, these are locomotives, and that's a big one. And there, after wear and tear, they were throwing off this steel and then bring new steel. So you're producing more amount of steel at that point of time. So at least I think companies have now got very conscious that they will start cutting in more amount of sustainability into each individual components that they have. So I think I know of a customer who's got at least about 15 to 20% of the components which are going in, which can be recycled and they can reclaim at least 80% of the material. That part of the work is being done by us for them. So initiatives of this nature are something which are very critical. On the society front, we do a fairly large amount of work on education. So therefore, through education, we are creating the consciousness on part of the society that sustainability also becomes important. It is just not education in schools. We have educations, what is called as literacy, digital literacy, and we also have education or skilling in terms of micro skilling. So, in every one of these three spheres, where we touch probably about 50,000 to 60,000 people every year, sustainability is one of the themes on which they're also being made conscious about.
And sir, looking at the future, like we heard about Industry 4.0 and smart manufacturing, and how do you see that evolving and you play a role, and how important it is for the larger industry and for us in the country? How do you see that?
See, irrespective of sustainability, that is an extremely important part because there is a fairly serious technology transformation that's happening because of Industry 4.0. And so companies are definitely implementing them. These are the Industry 4.0, which is basically integration of physical and cyber world. That's what it's happening. Is something which is very disruptive. So if you don't change, somebody will change the world. So therefore, your business itself is at stake. Take the example of its digital is what we just now talked about. There used to be a company called Kodak, which had at one stage 95% of the global camera market. They had 90% of the film market in the world. Where are they now? They're selling some spare parts. So, what did the disruption happen? The digital cameras came into play. Now, the cameras are there in your pocket, they're all around. If you look at an Apple iPhone, it has 4 cameras on it, 3 front cameras, 1 back camera. So that's how the technology has changed. This is all about miniaturization, digital technologies. And why are those digital technologies important? Thereafter, the Industry 4.0's AI, ML, AR, VR, blockchain, all those can be applied on the data that's coming in. And actually, if you look at Industry 4.0, the cameras have become so powerful, we think that the vision is something which is the computers are doing much better than a human eye. They can see better than us because you can always expand them. Yes. And you can run algorithms on top of that and do it. So every company has to change with technology. And do not think that these are limited to some manufacturing companies. We see the technology has become all pervasive. You can see technology in agriculture, logistics, education, healthcare, you name it. I'll give you an example. So, therefore, what we are believing at this point of time is that you need to embrace technology. Not technology will solve all your problems. You perfect the technology to say how the technology intervention will make the product or a service a lot more efficient.
True, sir. I mean, we've seen a lot of this in the public infrastructure in the country also, and they want to take it to Pan India Research G20. So, final, I would like to know that very popular question. Like a lot of people apprehension. You see, like India being a very young nation, and a lot of people are always looking at employment. So there's always this discussion going on, like for a long time, and even in this case now, like with the new generation of technologies coming, AI and 4.0, they keep saying this, repeating that there will be loss of employment. Do you think so? It will happen.
No, I don't think it will be a loss of employment. That's a wrong way to look at it. There will be a requirement in terms of change of skills for people. You need to upskill yourself, you need to reskill yourself to fit into the newer environment. You look at AI, ML, any of these technologies, they will not come from the sky. Somebody did not throw them to us and we caught them. It's we who created those technologies. So human beings are required to create this more and more of these technologies. People are saying the chatbots that have come by, or the chat GPT, or any of the open AI, generative AI that's come in, will take away jobs. Will take away certain type of jobs. But if you look at Chat GPT, I have to repurpose that software with the APIs, which can help my company. So there's a fairly large amount of work that I create. My very classic example I keep saying is I have a picture somebody shared with me of New York, Fifth Avenue, 1907. From a vantage point, they took a picture of the street. It had all nothing but horse drawn carriages, except in one corner, there's one tiny car. 10 years later, from the same vantage point, they took the picture of the same street. The street is full of cars, except a few horse drawn buggies. We didn't kill the horses. The horsemen did not die because of starvation because their jobs were lost. We repurposed them. We made sure that they got skilled. They became drivers. They became auto mechanics.
I'm sure the horses felt very happy about that.
So therefore, you don't need to be worried about technology changes.
No, I think I see that, sir. That definitely whatever with my experience I've seen industrialism, people are calling status quo, changing the status quo as some kind of a drawback. So because we are doing a lot of transition in many aspects in terms of energy or infrastructure, technology, education, employment. Obviously, it cannot be status quo. Obviously, you have to, as you said, skilling has to be done. People have said the same thing in 90s that if IT comes, I think everybody will have to skill.
Exactly. There are dharnas, hartals in the banks. I was selling computers at that point of time. Nothing has happened, right? Life has become more efficient. I haven't been to a bank for the last 2 years or 3 years. I sit in my home, and today there was some challenge in terms of getting some UPI stuff done, so they're setting it up on my mobile phone. Good, Naveen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. This all looks positive, and thank you very much for your time.
I can't be more optimistic than this.